flat. It's really flat, but don't tell too many people that. They wouldn't be able to handle it. You know what they're like? They've only just gotten over the ascent of the Third Reich. The world is flat. It always has been. It's really flat. Have you not walked out the door and seen the horizons in the distance on a nice straight line? You can't fall off the edge. You just teleport to the other side. The world is flat, and that boy Columbus was full of shit. I mean, there was the film Crude to document none of this. Fair enough, he says he went west and supposedly found a new land, but it wasn't really new. You see, it belonged to a red man. The world is flat. You can see it with the mortality of your eyes. And don't be bullshitted by the establishment's lies. I mean, a ball spinning in space. Get yourselves on, for God's sake. The world is flat, and that is the end of that. Next they'll be telling us a dog's a cat as plain as God, and the devil, and heaven, and hell, and the fairies, and the goblins, and the by the wishing well. The world is flat, with a monopoly board around you outside, and it does sometimes cause the sea to rise and subside. That's how you get earthquakes and tsunamis too. There's big giant capitalists playing Monopoly, and they're fucking screwing yous. The chance cards are situated down beside Australia. Community chests are located up in the middle of Canada. And if you sail out to the centre of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a massive big Monopoly spelled buoyed by the sea's motion. God created the boat and the dog and the iron in his own image, and on the seventh day he created a game called cribbage. The world is flat, because Buddha loves board games and card games. What do you think you do in hell? There aren't really any flames. You see, what happens is you go there and you play trivial with the devil, and if you beat that boy, they move you up a spiritual level. The world is flat, as you and I and everybody knows. By the way, here's 200. You only have to pass and go. Up and down. I'm going to do sad stuff, happy stuff. It's going to go all over the place, so bear with me, please. I wrote this poem today. It's from my niece Fiona. It's called Cheesy Extremism. Asda support extremism. My niece was looking for medium cheddar, but there didn't seem to be any. When she told me, I went and had a look, but no medium cheddar. There was mild cheddar, mature cheddar, and there was even strong cheddar and one labelled extra strong. We carried on to the next aisle, but it was niggling in my mind. The lack of medium cheddar just seemed so wrong. I had to go and ask an assistant about it. We're looking for medium cheddar, I told the lady with the pricing trolley. She walked with me to the short distance to where the cheese was and had a look. I'm sorry, she said, but they don't seem to have taken it out due to a lack of demand. I thanked her and walked on, wondering if this extremism was reflective of Asda's policies or if it was actually a social issue. Do people really only want either mild or very strong cheese? And what does this reliance on dairy products to the far right and far left say about this nation and Farnborough in particular? This poem is called Ritual. I begin pacing. As a slight lack of ease emerges, I immediately pick up a pen, turning it in my fussy fingers, searching my mind for the first of the unburdened words. I touch the fresh page as if it were a lifelong lover, following the lines, pausing over the punched paper, making little circles there as if I were twirling her hair while I whisper new initiations to myself. After the order of the first few words arrives, I make sinuous inkings and the poem unfolds unceasingly as I shift trance-like through the sentences. My progress is perpetual. This is my ritual. I live only for this. The multicolored people have white children. They walk around the town looking browned off, so many of them tan to the max. But this is not the climate for that. I wrote this in Northern Ireland in December. They cannot have gotten so pigmented by worshipping Ra in our excuse for summer. I think they want to be the opposite of Michael Jackson. And as if those who are striving for swarthy shades are not bad enough, others are walking around not so much tanned as tan gold. Well, sure, it still literally has tan in the description, I suppose. Why would anyone want to look like that? They're like tall Oompa Loompas. And the Orange Order will no doubt be receiving a lot more applications via the nationalist community from young Catholics who now have a desire to be orange women. What is wrong? None of this has anything to do with colour. I might add, from my perspective, people are what they are. I really don't care. But there has to be something seriously suspect about a person's sense of self when they become so displeased with the very skin they've been born in. And I mean that both as an analogy and in the more immediate physical sense. The multicoloured people have white children. I wonder what those white children will be generations from now. Maybe they're being noble and preparing for the multicoloured, multicultural future we'll be having. A future which I support. You see, I'm not a racist, but I'm not a fucking orange man either. I'm just Ice Age white. And you know what? It's alright. This poem's called Inequality. If you think people are different, you're supporting inequality. If there is inequality, someone will look at you and label you. If one person is a scumbag, then we're all scumbags, and conversely, kings and queens. If you think anyone is better than anyone else for any reason, you're supporting inequality. No one is unique, no one is different, no one is less than, no one is better. Everyone is human. This poem's called A Smile. When you hurt a person, you're not only hurting them, you're hurting all the people they contact. After you've hurt them, they may look for a smile, but the space where it should be is taken up by the pain you passed on to them earlier. The people they cannot offer a smile to walk away with nothing except a fraction of your pain, and they pass that on to all the people they meet. Later, after much disappointment, you will meet someone and you may well be in need of a smile, but there won't be any smiles there. You shouldn't wait for someone else to smile. You should go first, because every smile you put out there will come back to you later. This poem is called Saving the Children. Two young lads came into the charity shop with their mother, and the youngest, who'd have been about 7, immediately began incessantly asking for something, anything. He was determined to leave with a prize of some sort in his young, eager hands. The older one, who was about 10, didn't say a word. I think he knew his mother a bit better than his younger brother did. They were not in very long, just a quick look around, but on the way to the door, the young lad's wanting continued, and in one last attempt, right before they were exiting, he said, "But Mum, you'll be saving the children if you get me something." To which his mother replied, "If you don't shut up, there will only be one child needs saving." This poem's called A Shock. "Wasn't that a shock about Seamus Heaney?" she said. "A shock? Why?" I replied. "Did you not hear?" she continued. "He's dead." "It's hardly a shock," I told her. "People die all the time. It's an absolute certainty." "It was so unexpected though," she said. "He was supposed to be doing a reading in Belfast next week." I had to stop myself from saying any more, because I'm very aware that I see death differently and with less of the surprise that most of society sees it. I know about death. I have seen it from so many angles that it isn't something I fear or get emotional about now. There was a slight pause, and then she said, "Yes, it was an awful shame." "Yeah," I said, "a shame, and him a poet and all." This poem is called Hopefully. When we stop being hopeful, we stop trying. Similarly, when we think we know everything, we don't try to make differences, because we think it is as we tell ourselves it is. It isn't how you tell yourself it is. Everything has 100,000 possibilities, so you must start looking for the thoughts you haven't thought yet. This poem is called Pitiful. I got off at Lisburn station to change trains, and there was an old man who walked awkwardly, was scruffy, and whose clothes were mismatched and grubby. I walked over the footbridge to wait on the opposite platform, and from there I watched him as he slowly made his way across using the same route I had taken. A woman of about my age and a teenager, who I assume was her daughter, sat on a bench beside where I stood. As the old man approached, they were laughing at him, mocking his manner and shaking their heads in obvious disapproval. He hadn't spoken to or even looked at them. I began to feel pity, but not for the old man. This poem's called The Crude Muslim. She was the coolest Muslim I had ever seen. She sat at a bus stop with her child in a pram facing her. Her left arm was up on the handle of the buggy like she was leaning out a lowrider window. Her foot was up on the pram, slowly tapping the air like she was just chilling there in imaginary rhythms. As I got closer again, I noticed she was talking, and as I passed them, I realised her phone was resting inside her headscarf, and she was hands-free on that shit. She had her little baby's toy in her right hand, and she was shaking it at him as she spoke on the phone, and he was giggling, and she was giggling, and chewing gum, and chatting relaxed and nonchalantly, and just being way cooler than 95% of the general population. I'm sorry, I'm Seamus Fox. And it's really good to be here. I just got into that and I just fucking went for it there, so I've only just realised what I'm doing here, so I do apologise. My name's Seamus Fox. It's really, really good to be here. I'm staying with my niece up in Farnborough. I live in Colchester. I'm not from England though, as you can probably figure it out. So the next poem is called The Man Against the Wall Talking to Someone Who Wasn't There. I surmised that it couldn't last long, that sitting against the wall talking to someone who wasn't there. That always ends badly, especially when vodka is involved. I didn't understand his wet brain lingo, but I did understand because I had spoken to people who weren't there, and I had seen things that didn't exist. I only stopped for a couple of minutes to watch him while the others all passed by quickly, shocked in some manner. I haven't seen him since. He could be in hospital or in a grave right now. So maybe he will be the person who isn't there the next time someone talks to someone who isn't there. This poem is called Balance. The trouble with balance is that all the optimists think you're a pessimist, and all the pessimists think you're an optimist. This poem's called Cyclical. The problem is not nationality or religion or any of the other divisions we can make it out to be. The problem is that human beings are killing human beings. And if our response to this is to kill human beings, then we are the problem. The solution would be to stop killing human beings and wait a generation or two until other human beings stop doing the same. But that would take extreme patience and extreme compassion. You see, violence creates more violence. So it is only when violence ceases that violence will cease. This poem's called The Meaning of It All. It's from a buddy, Lee Wharton, who passed a few years ago. He came out of a cloud brandishing enlightenment. Slowly he shut his stolen eyes, and as soon as they reopened I could tell there had been a major change, albeit temporary. He looked so assured right then. I didn't think it was going to be so easy, he told me. It's amazing. We're drinking the last of last night's Buckfast. It's Saturday morning just after 8 in the 1990s, and I have no recollection of whose living room I'm in. He doesn't seem to care. The discovery he's just made has put sparkles in his retinas. Or maybe it was the cannabis that made those candescent eyes that shone like a modern renaissance. He draws long upon an expertly built cone, then passes it to me, and after a few concentric rolls of his chemically slowed head, he says, "Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be so easy. It's amazing." "What's amazing?" I ask in a near high-pitched tone because I'm in the middle of a gauntlet of inhaling. "The meaning of it all," he says quietly. "The meaning of it all." "So what is the meaning, Morton?" I ask, intrigued. "I don't know now," he tells me. "I knew a few seconds ago." "Morton, you're fucking stoned, man." "I know," he says. "Imagine forgetting something that so many people are so eager to discover." This poem is called 20. I was standing on a platform during one of those nowhere moments. I couldn't do anything until a train came, so I just stood there, stepped this way, then that, look at my phone every 10 seconds, check the timetable again. This old man walks up and starts pointing down onto the tracks. "That's a disgrace," he says. "It's been there for months now." "What's that?" I ask. "That £20 note," he tells me. "It's just sitting there getting all dirty from the oil. If I was younger, I'd jump down there and get it. I check every time I'm at this station if it's still there, and it always is. If it wasn't against the law," I tell him, "I would jump down there and get it for you." "Sure, if you jumped all the way down there," he says, "you'd be as well keeping it for yourself. You'd need to give it a good wash though." The train came shortly thereafter and we got on in different carriages, and I have never seen him since. But the £20 note is always there. I check every time I'm at that station. It feels like I'm carrying on a proud tradition. This poem's called Angel. Angel sits by the blackened road contemplating broken bottles. In his mind, it is always yesterday. He only has one usable hand. The other is clenched, anticipating an attack that never transpires, and pulsing solid energy. He can almost feel the hatred carried there in that clutched broken appendage. Angel's face is a battle map, points of distinction rising like dead soldier hills, purple, black, red mounds. His eyes are disappearing, his mouth is slow, his skin is riddled and corpse yellow, and he speaks fondly of the rain, as though it were an old friend who keeps coming back. He points intensively as he speaks, because mere words cannot convey all his indignity. Angel has no recognition of time or emotion. He wonders where it all went and where it all went wrong. He doesn't remember much, having been mostly blacked out or deranged during a cataclysmic half-life, yet somehow he remembers nothing ever being enough. Angel is eternally alone, even in crowds and among the similarly afflicted. In their circumstantial gatherings, no one is truly alive, and no one looks at or speaks about the sky. Angel knows his place and carries it as well as one can carry such a crooked crossed metaphor. His self-victimization is a direct reflection of never having been able to show his busted love. Angel seems aggressive, but when you go down to him, his eyes begin reappearing, and there's a smile there behind those methylated lips. And I believe him when he tells me that he never wanted or expected any of it to happen. This poem is called Sandwiches and Death. At the hospital, in the queue for the coffee kiosk, two old men were talking about someone who had very recently died. A couple of minutes later, a child was crying very loudly, and a young boy walked past, flailing his arms like a madman. "That's a disgrace," one of the men whispered to the other, and at a time like this, I felt like saying, "Wise up, they're just kids, they don't know anything about death." I didn't say it though. I just kept wondering how long my mother would last, while I was trying to decide if I would have the ham and egg or the chicken, bacon and mayo sandwich. This poem is called Jesus Poem. We were working in a shop on Botanic Avenue when a woman opened the door and said, "I seen Jesus!" And then she left to go to the next shop, presumably. Now, years ago, I would have called her crazy, but I don't know if she seen Jesus. I wasn't there. Not only that, I seen some crazy shit when I had the DTs, and that has left me somewhat open-minded. This poem is called A Poem About a Poem I Didn't Write. They cut it down, the dead tree. It was between black paths on the way to the lakes, with its grey, bark-free complexion and skeletal stance. I always said to myself as I passed that I should write a poem about that dead tree, but I never did. So when I seen they had taken it, I thought I better write a poem about not writing a poem about it. This poem is called New Tears. I was about 12 and I was coming in from school. My mother was about 50. She was standing looking out the window. The living room was empty. Carpet had just been put down that morning and we were expecting furniture deliveries in the coming days. We had just left my father. Mum started talking really fast, going through a mental list of things we needed to do, but I didn't really need to do anything. I was still at school. She broke halfway through a sentence and started crying. Then she went down into a hunkered position, leaning against the wall, and immediately began taking tissues from her pockets, attempting to hide the fact that she was in tears. I went over and put my hand on her head, and as I stared blankly out the window, I said, "It's all right, Mum. You can cry now." This poem is called One for Sorrow. I hadn't noticed the pigeons until the magpie arrived in a splayed, cackling loop. The pigeons were sitting quietly in the birch tree, cooing and being grey. The magpie didn't want to go to the birch tree. It just swung by there to disturb the pigeons before landing in an evergreen nearby. After the pigeons had left, the magpie was shifting around, mischievously peering off into the distance. Then away it swooped, angled for somewhere else. Another live dogfight, no doubt. Only seconds later, 2 pigeons flew back, maybe even the very same 2, but they didn't stop. They went in different directions, trying to find somewhere more peaceful. The magpie soon arrived back at the evergreen in their wake, throwing its head around, looking for new opportunities with its knife-like beak, a menacing thing in killer whale colours. As I watched it all happen, I was thinking to myself, that magpie is a bit of a bastard. This poem is called Passion, ? Some people say they're passionate rather than angry, but I have found that people who say this are usually just angry and they have difficulty admitting it. So they call their passion something more, call their anger something more acceptable. Passionate people don't go around telling everyone that they're passionate. They just are. Angry people, though, do sometimes say they're angry, apart from the ones who say they're passionate. This poem is called Still Here. Everyone is in an awful hurry. At the traffic lights they run across, unable to wait for a few minutes. On the trains I see them get up and stand by the door 5 minutes before the train has stopped. They sigh in queues, fidget in waiting rooms and stare impatiently at clocks and watches. We don't like the present. We want to be somewhere else, somewhere in the future. Everyone is in an awful hurry, but no one is going anywhere. We're all still here. In the late 70s or early 80s, myself and my friends would go to the edge of our estate to throw stones across the road at the West Acres once, and they would throw stones back. It wasn't sectarian, and I didn't know any of them. We just knew that they were not like us, and for some reason they deserved it. I don't know exactly how long that went on for, but it was long enough for a childish hatred to develop. For 3 or 4 years after that, we didn't like anyone from West Acres, but this had started for no reason, and since we were only 6 or 7, it must have been some vague instinct within us. It was only when I was much older that I began venturing further from home and started liking the look of a girl from West Acres that this unintended hatred ended. Now, if 6 or 7-year-olds can start hating for no reason whatsoever, there's obviously a flaw in the human character rather than in the individuals. You see, there isn't any reason for hatred. It's just something that we feel, that we create reasons for. This poem's called An Undesirable. I was watching pigeons on Botanic Avenue, a group of them, majestic looking creatures, feathers preened with a silvery sheen from their iridescent necks, and so graceful. The 4 or 5 that I was watching had an obvious understanding, a universal unison. Their movements seemed to coincide as they packed pieces on the ground while waddling in their little circle of acceptance. Another pigeon came along, quite unlike the others. Its feathers were rough and uneven. Its leg was injured, making its walk pronounced and haphazard. As it approached the others, they started attacking it, butting it with their beaks and chasing it aggressively away. What a world this is, I mused. Even the pigeons are at it. This poem's called The Irish Girl at the Train Station. In 1990, at a train station in southern England, I waited each morning to go to work. At the time, I always wore an Irish football jersey. One morning, this girl who I had seen on many occasions came over and asked me if I was Irish. I gave her a really odd look and walked away. She wasn't very attractive and had on glasses. I was 17 and shit like that mattered back then. That moment keeps coming back to me. I can still see her standing there looking all disappointed. She was probably very self-conscious about it. Every few months she pops into my head, and I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had spoken to her at least. And I wish I didn't have to carry around such fucking seemingly meaningless regrets for 26 years. This poem's called Choking. I answer the phone to book collections and deliveries of second-hand furniture. This woman phoned one day, and when I answered, she was choking. "Are you all right?" I asked. "No, I'm not all right," she said. "I'm choking." "I'm really sorry to hear that," I told her. "It might be better if you rang me back when you stopped choking." She never rang back. I hope she's all right. Guys, I don't know about you, but I've had a really good time. I've really enjoyed this. I really have. I'm going to do 2 more. Right? Hold on to your hats now. Seriously, this is serious business. Right? This poem is serious business. Okay, I get it. I understand. You were born here. Maybe your parents were born here. But even if the parents of your parents were born here, this is not your country. Winning a coincidental genetic lottery and subsequently being raised within particular geopolitical boundaries does not make this your country. It just makes you lucky. Why can you not appreciate the height of your good fortune instead of turning it into tribal bragging rights? This is not your country. Nationality is not something you choose. So not only is your pride misplaced, it's fake. And the anger that you mistakenly call passion that follows your fake pride cannot be excused. While you accuse the innocent and refuse to admit to your own senseless, indefensible ignorance, you're overlooking something. None of this belongs to you. This is not your country. Migration and immigration are facts of human life. Whether it's for work, for worth, or to escape tribal strife, people have always migrated and immigrated. Has everyone forgotten how America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa were founded? Why is the recent history of the British Empire being so understated? Human beings have always been moving and thus reviewing and shifting their cultural and genetic dispositions. We are citizens of this earth. First, we are citizens of this earth, actually, evidently, figuratively and literally, and I may even be a little bit sorry that I have to say it to you that this is not your country. And before anybody starts thinking I'm just another rebellious Mick living in England, I really need to say this. When I was living in the country which is supposedly my country, you know, where we can't decide upon a nationality, I was telling people there, this is not your country, because I'm not just talking about this country or that country, I'm talking about every country. Countries are just bits of the earth that we inhabit due to the circumstance and chance of birth. None of this belongs to you or him or them or her. No one owns the sky, the land, the sea or the air. Not the government, the queen, the clergy, the rich, the poor, the living, the dead, and definitely not me. And even though your mind is confused and polarised, I still recognise the absolute value of human equality. None of this earth belongs to anybody. And I'm very sorry, but this is not your country. In Belfast we call bread rolls bops. What happened to bops? Belfast used to be Bop City back in the day, and now all you get is pastry, this or that. Are we fucking French or what? What happened to coconut fingers and gravy rings, the currant squares and creamy dans, the bops? I swear it's a conspiracy. Someone's renamed our bops. Bops and all subsequent connotations and associations are part of the very essence of our misspent Irishness or misspent Britishness, depending on the cultural mix needed into your slow-baked demographic. How many boys nicknamed Bop do you know? I can recall at least 5 in my lifetime. You'll not get away with renaming our bops. Don't be honest, your eyes will be swole up like bops. So just raise a bop and lay off our bops, chop, or we'll be assembling an army of boys by name of Bop, and you'll be getting slapped. You'll be getting crimped, blanched, broiled, dusted. You'll be getting battered. Bop, bop, bop. With all these super swank supermarkets nowadays, the humble bop is near extinct. Now, I'm all for multiculturalism, but the folks coming here got to recognise how we've been bred, and the conglomerates can still make their dough. Just don't be taking our bops around telling you we lost a bop. So make sure you support your local bakery. Get in there and get yourself some proper bops, and where you get bops back on the map. Just don't go in saying, here love, give us a look at your bops, would you? Guys, thanks very much, I really appreciate it. Thank you.